So you have played the Resident Evil remakes. Maybe it was the beautifully crafted RE2 and RE3 remake, or even the recent RE4 remake. But now you are wondering, are the original games still worth playing? Or do they feel outdated, clunky, and not worth the time? Well, that's exactly what we are going to explore in this video. If you have never touched the original Resident Evil games and only know the franchise through the remakes, then this video is for you. I will be breaking down all the major differences, gameplay mechanics, controls, puzzle designs, missing content, and even changes to the overall tone. The goal is to help you decide if revisiting these classics is worth it after getting used to the remakes. One of the biggest difference between the original Resident Evil games and the remakes is the camera system. Up until Resident Evil 4, the series used fixed camera angles, meaning that each scene had a set viewpoint that didn't move. This created a very cinematic, airy atmosphere, but also made movement and aiming a bit tricky. The remakes, starting with Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, ditched this system in favor of the over the shoulder perspective, introduced for the first time in RE4. This change made aiming and movement much more smoother, giving players more control and making combat more engaging. If you are someone who isn't a fan of the fixed camera angles, going back to the originals might be difficult. However, if you can get used to them, they add a level of tension and fear that the remakes don't fully replicate. The limited viewpoints make it so you can't always see what's coming around the corner, increasing the sense of dread and surprise attack from enemies. Moving on, now let's talk about the controls. The original games featured what's known as the tank controls. This means that pressing up moves your character forward, left and right rotate them, and pressing back makes the character step backwards. It's a control scheme that was designed around the fixed camera angles, ensuring players could always orient themselves properly no matter where the camera switched. However, in the remakes, we have modern movement controls, where your character moves in the direction you press, making it feel more natural and responsive. If you have only played these remakes, adjusting to the tank controls might be frustrating at first. But for older gamers or those who have played classic survival horror titles before, it won't be much of an issue. The original force you to think carefully about movement and positioning, which adds to the tension but can feel outdated by today's standards. If we talk about the puzzle designs, then the original Resident Evil games were known for their intricate puzzles. Many of them required backtracking, finding specific items, and paying close attention to the environmental clues. The remake streamlined some of these puzzles, making them simpler and more accessible to modern players. For example, the RE3 remake removed the classic water treatment plant puzzle and replaced it with a more straightforward version. Similarly, some of the original RE2 complex puzzles were either simplified or altered completely in the remake to keep pacing more action oriented. If you enjoy classic survival horror style puzzles, you might find the originals more rewarding. But if you prefer a more action heavy experience without too much stopping and thinking, the remakes will surely suit you better. Next up, we have quick time events. Quick time events or QTEs were a big part of Resident Evil 4, where you had to press buttons during cutscenes or combat sequences to dodge attacks or escape enemies. The RE4 remake removed many of these QTEs, replacing them with more interactive gameplay moments. This is a big difference for those who played the original RE4 and enjoyed its high-stakes button mashing segments. If you go back to the original after playing the remake, you might be caught off guard by how many QTEs pop up. But if you're someone who never liked them in the first place, then sticking with the remake might be a better choice. One of the most controversial aspects of the remakes is that while they improve graphics and gameplay, they sometimes remove content from the original games. For example, in RE3 Remake, the Clock Tower section was entirely cut, as well as some enemy types like the Gravedigger. Many fans felt this made the game feel shorter and less faithful to the original. Similarly, certain interactions and alternate pathways were removed from the RE2 remake, making it more streamlined experience. RE4 remake also cut some sections like the famous lava room, which was high intensity combat area in the original. The RE4 remake also removes some of the more campy and over the top moments, such as Leon's more exaggerated one-liners and certain boss fight interactions. On the other hand, the remakes do add new content. The RE1 remake introduced Lisa Trevor, an entirely new and terrifying enemy with added lore. The RE2 remake expanded Mr. X's presence, making him more terrifying throughout the game. If you're a fan of having all the original content intact, then going back to the classics might be worth it. But if you prefer a more refined and modernized experience, then remakes might be your choice. Finally, moving on, another major difference is how horror is handled in the original games compared to the remakes. The classic games relied heavily on tension, limited resources, and slow paced exploration to create fear. The fixed camera angles and tank controls made every encounter feel dangerous because you weren't always in full control. The remakes, while they're still scary, focus more on moment to moment action. The RE2 remake, for instance, gives you more mobility and better ability to fight back, reducing the sense of helplessness. Meanwhile, the RE4 remake refines action horror balance but removes some of the campiness that the original had. So, if you prefer psychological horror with slow gameplay, the originals are the way to go. But if you like more fluid and cinematic horror action experiences, then remakes will likely be more enjoyable. So, now it's time for my final verdict. And that is, if you have only played the remakes and are wondering if the originals are worth your time, it really depends on what kind of experience you are looking for. If you can adjust to the older mechanics, you will find a lot of depth, challenge, and atmosphere in the original games that the remake don't have. However, if you prefer smoother controls, faster pacing, and a more modern feel, then the remakes will likely be enough for you. There is no right or wrong answer here. It all comes down to personal preference. So that's all for the video, guys. If you enjoyed my video and want more content like this, then make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, peace out.